Babbo is one of the most notable Italian restaurants in New York City. Over the years, it's achieved stellar reviews, a Michelin Star, and was at one point one of the hardest reservations to snag in NYC. However, after the restaurant's celebrity chef became embroiled in controversy, Babbo was never the same. Thankfully, it's a new day. The restaurant has a new owner, chef, and menu, and I just had to give Babbo a try. It's a cool, crisp day today here in New York City. Right now I'm at Washington Square Park, but of course the real excitement comes later when I go to dinner. I'll be dining at one of the most notable Italian restaurants in the city. I'll be going to Babbo. Now, over the decades of Babbo's existence, it's had its share of ups and downs. At one point, it was one of the hottest reservations to get in NYC, and it even had a Michelin Star. However, trouble came for the restaurant when its celebrity chef, Mario Batali, was confronted with a number of very serious allegations. As a result, Batali sold his interest in the restaurant, and for the last 5 or so years, he's had nothing to do with it. Recently, though, the Starr restaurant group took over Babbo with the intention of breathing some new life into the restaurant. Babbo now has a new chef and a new menu, but apparently some of the classic dishes that made the restaurant what it is are still on the menu. And it does look like a good menu. I've been studying it for a week now, just trying to formulate a game plan for tonight. Unfortunately, I've never gone to Babbo in the past before it was part of the Starr restaurant group, so I really have nothing to compare it to. However, I've been to a number of restaurants that are part of the Starr restaurant group, and that is a restaurant group that knows what they're doing. Plus, I love Italian food, and in fact, today will be the first fine dining restaurant for me for 2026, so I'm particularly excited. With that being said, let's head to dinner at the revitalized Babbo. Babbo is located in Greenwich Village, just steps away from Washington Square Park. It was established in 1998 by chef Mario Batali and restaurateur Joe Bastianich. Right off the bat, Babbo was a hit. It received rave reviews and was awarded 3 stars from the New York Times. It later earned the James Beard Award and was bestowed a Michelin Star, which it maintained for a number of years. The restaurant was also featured in Bill Buford's excellent book Heat, which I highly recommend reading. However, a dark cloud emerged over Babbo when numerous harassment allegations came to light against Batali. As a result, Batali sold his shares, not just in Babbo, but the other establishments he was involved in, from Italy to Lupa. In the years that followed, Babbo continued, but it wasn't quite the same. Pete Wells of the New York Times downgraded the restaurant from 3 to 2 stars. Babbo was still generally well regarded, but it certainly lacked something. However, things changed in 2025 when it was announced that Starr would be taking over the restaurant. Starr's restaurant group has establishments all over the country. In New York City, for instance, there's the Michelin Star Le Cuckoo, which I loved. In fact, when I ate there in 2024, it ended up being one of the best meals I had that year. Most recently, I dined at Le Café Louis Vuitton, which is another Starr restaurant that I really enjoyed. In fact, during my meal at Babbo, I met Starr and got to talk with him briefly, which was an honor. Plus, he did something very nice for me, which I would find out about later in my meal. With the change of ownership, there was also a change of chef, as veteran Mark Ladner took the helm. Previously, Ladner actually worked at Babbo and then Lupa before serving as the executive chef of the Michelin Star and sadly closed Del Posto. I was fortunate enough to have dined at Del Posto, and it was a fine meal indeed. The new Babbo officially opened at the end of October 2025, and I couldn't wait to experience it when I showed up for my reservation at 5 p.m. on a Monday night. After checking in, I was soon seated in the ground floor dining room, which seems to be largely the same from the restaurant's earlier years, but the second floor apparently has received a nice touch-up. I liked the atmosphere of Babbo. It was elegant, but still fun, especially with regards to the restaurant's diverse and energetic soundtrack. Once I was settled, I began to explore the menu. The new Babbo menu features classic courses that solidified the restaurant's reputation, but also new dishes drawn from Chef Ladner's decades of cooking. One dish that's gotten a lot of buzz at Babbo, although I didn't see it on the menu, is a 100-layer lasagna for $100. To me, it seems a bit ridiculous, and something that was crafted mainly for social media. Even though it stems from Ladner's time at Del Posto, it still looks good, and thankfully it feeds 4. Next, I explored the beverage menu. Babbo has a deep wine list, but that night I felt like getting a cocktail. I went with the tomato martini, which contained vodka, tomato gin, basil eau-de-vie, lemon, and black pepper. Now, I've been burned in the past when it came to ordering unique martinis. For instance, the pepperoncini martini that I had from Bad Roman I thought was atrocious, and the MSG martini that I had from Bonnie's wasn't much better. Fortunately, I loved that tomato martini. It was well balanced, and that hit of basil on the nose was a delight. Now, it wasn't the most powerful in regards to its alcohol content, but flavor-wise, I loved it. Next up was the bread, which came with an impressive spread of tempered mascarpone and olive oil. Those two tiny pieces of filone bread did look a little sad in such a large bowl, but that was really no big deal because I'm sure I could have asked for more. I applied some of the mascarpone to a slice and gave it a go. Now that was a solid bread course. The bread on its own was good. It was slightly toasted, but with the mascarpone and olive oil, it was wonderful. I could have easily eaten a ton of bread, but I had my appetizer to attend to. In fact, I received it before I was even able to take a bite of the bread. I went with the Babbo celery salad, which contained pink celery puntarelle style with Caesar dressing and Babbo breadsticks. I found that salad to be delightful. The greens were nice and crisp and lent a pleasing texture to the dish. I particularly loved the richness of the dressing, which had a good anchovy flavor. The Babbo breadsticks served as croutons and had a nice taste and texture to them. All of those elements together equated to be a solid and satisfying salad. My dinner was certainly off to a great start. Next up was the pasta course. I decided to go with one of Babbo's most famous offerings, the beef cheek ravioli, which contained crushed chicken liver and black truffle butter. The dish looked great, but considering it came with a $45 price tag and there were only 5 pieces of pasta, that translated to $9 per square. All I can say is it damn well better be good for that price. Thankfully, it was incredible. The pasta was perfectly cooked, but the beef cheek filling made the dish special. It was very tender and rich, but combined with the chicken liver and black truffle butter, it took it to another level. When I was presented with the pasta, I was also given a bowl of Parmesan, which I then added to the ravioli to give it an extra umami kick. Overall, that course was spectacular, and it's no wonder why it remains a Babbo favorite after all these years. After finishing, it was on to the main course. I went with the grilled branzino, which contained Tuscan cal, gigante beans, and a tomato vinaigrette. It was a good-sized portion. It was practically the whole fish, minus the head of course. The dish looked hearty and comforting, and I couldn't wait to try it. First, I squeezed a bit of the lemon over the fish, and then I dove right in. Simply put, that branzino was excellent. First off, it was perfectly cooked. The skin was super crispy and savory, while the flesh was nice and soft, resulting in a wonderful textural contrast. That branzino was tender and flavorful and a delight merely on its own, but the other components on the plate certainly enhanced that dish as well. Now, there was nothing really new or innovative about that course, but what it was a satisfying seafood dish that I loved. It was hearty and flavorful and just ticked off all the boxes for me. After finishing, it was time for dessert. Babbo has a very intriguing dessert menu with a number of Italian classics featuring a few modern twists. Everything sounded good to me, but ultimately I decided to try the blueberry blue cheese budino. However, I was in for quite the surprise because I was also given 2 other desserts that were on the house. Now, that was incredibly generous of the restaurant, and I was very grateful for it. First, I turned my attention to the budino, which contained grissini crust, macerated blueberries, and orange peel. Right away, I knew that dish was going to be special as my fork just glided right through it, and it was special indeed. I thought that treat was a triumph, a 10 out of 10 from texture to flavor. The budino was rich and smooth, and combined with a slightly salty crust and the sweet and acidic blueberries, that equated to be a flawless dessert. Next, I tried the tiramisu, which seems to be an off-menu item. Now that was the definition of what a tiramisu should be. It was creamy, rich, and well balanced in terms of sweetness and flavor. All around, that was a solid dessert. Finally, I tried the Babbo Zablione with sour cherries and cat's tongue cookies. While a Zablione may be a classic Italian dessert, it's not one that I see very often on menus in US Italian restaurants. Basically, I was meant to take one of the cookies and dip it into the Zablione. The result was a perfectly satisfying dessert. The Zablione was cool and rich with a light sweetness, but it was the tart sour cherries which gave the course a nice pop to it. Combined with the crunchy, freshly baked cookies, it was a delight. Overall, I was very pleased and grateful for that feast of sweets before me. In fact, I almost finished it all except for a bit of the Zablione, but I was satisfied. Finally, it was time for the bill, which ended up being quite the surprise as it totaled to only 1 cent. It turns out my meal was courtesy of Starr, which was so incredibly generous and I was very grateful for it. As a result, I felt it was only right to return that generosity to the excellent staff who attended to me that evening, so I left a $100 tip. Overall, I was thoroughly pleased with my experience at Babbo. So I just finished my dinner at Babbo. That was one hell of a meal. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was quite the surprise to get a bill with only a single penny on it. It was unnecessary, but I am very grateful for it and I certainly appreciate it. Although one of the reasons why I went to Babbo today was because over Christmas I got a Starr Restaurants gift card and I obviously wasn't going to use that for a single penny and tip. Oh well, at least it gives me a chance to go to another Starr restaurant in the future. Perhaps I'll go to Le Cuckoo again. I love that place. Anyway, back to Babbo. I really have no complaints with regards to the food. Everything I had, I really enjoyed. My favorite dish is definitely the beef cheek ravioli. That was probably one of the best ravioli dishes I've had in the last few years or so. It was super beefy and rich, and the pasta was cooked perfectly. Although I wish the portion size was a little larger and the price tag a little smaller. I was also very intrigued with the other pasta dishes on the menu. In fact, I was contemplating if I should just go straight pasta for my dinner and skip a main, but I'm glad I got that bronzino because that was a textbook bronzino. My second favorite dish of the night was the blueberry bundino I had for dessert. That was incredible. It was sweet and acidic and slightly salty while being texturally perfect. Oh, I love that one. Although I still really enjoyed the other two desserts I had. They were excellent. Babbo is definitely a restaurant that you do not want to skip dessert at. Overall, I definitely think Babbo is one of these Italian restaurants that is a must visit in New York City. Unfortunately, like I said, I can't compare it to how Babbo used to be, but for what I experienced, I really enjoyed it. I definitely have to go back sometime to try that 100-layer, $100 lasagna. Even though I think it's a little ridiculous, it still looks really good. To sum it up, I had a great meal tonight at Babbo. I am very grateful for it, and that is one restaurant that I'll certainly be returning to.